of fun and frivolity and news and everything that's going on. Jesse will have us up on Facebook Live, and we'll get ready to kick this puppy off here real soon. While I shut my phone off, so you will not hear the ring-a-ling-a-ding-ding-ding. On this, we're going through 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's that funky slide guitar music that comes on every Monday through Friday, live at 5 on iNewswire, Facebook, and the aforementioned YouTube, which we fired off on that. Stephanie's not with us today. She should be in tomorrow. Had some things to do, and we'll probably get into some of that later on. But all kinds of stuff breaking. Some of this stuff, and sometimes you don't. I know a lot of people don't get the nuances of things that we bring out on this program. So you think, oh, what in the heck are they talking about this stuff? Well, as news breaks and stuff, you will see why, because we come to that back and forth on that. But something that really, the big news in the Inland Empire is obviously the Yucaipa El Dorado fire that's burnt, gazillion acres on that, along with some of the other ones going on. But it's found out that I guess it was a gender reveal party, and those of you that are listening to us up in Adelanto, that's where they do the ultrasound or whatever, and they identify, well, the baby is in mama's womb, whether it's a boy or a girl. And there's some sort of contest game or whatever that people play to this and yada, yada, yada that goes on. Well, I guess these geniuses decided on the hottest day, if not ever, this weekend, where it's been 115, 120, I think 121 in Los Angeles, for crying out loud. They've never seen temperatures like that. 120, I mean, that's almost Death Valley. I think Death Valley only was 125. These geniuses decided part of their gender reveal party was going to be a pyro party. Well, they've torched off whatever, 10,000 acres of that, endangered lots of lives and everything else. Now, I'm not against fireworks, or I don't freak out when they fire off on the deal or get excited. And if it was in Roy's world, I wouldn't be all wound up about fireworks and this, but I know some people are. But if you're going to pull a pyro party or whatever on a gender reveal, or this was your thing, it's probably not the best idea to be doing it on the day that it's 125 degrees outside or something close to that. And here we go again with the fires. Now we can get into the politics of how everything's been haywire and what's done with that, and we've went through that 100 times. But this is why we have to have fire departments in this. Not accidents happen, things happen, things malfunction, something blows up, electrical transformer blows up and causes a fire, your car lights on fire, your house lights on fire because of, something. That's understandable. But sometimes you got to use a little common sense. Hopefully, you should use a little common sense on some of this stuff, so we don't wind up with these situations. Because look how much damage something like this has done, to that, and unnecessarily, especially, taking back to the politics part a little bit. Because there's lots of fuel out there because we haven't been properly maintaining our forest lands, open spaces, and everything else. We, the potential of these things growing, as we've seen in these fire seasons the past 3 years, is very great. So let's try not to light fires or pyro shows on a gender reveal party on the day it's 120 freaking degrees on that. Pick something else. I'm sure you're creative enough to come up with that. Now, if it's December 25th or something and it's 40 degrees and raining outside, as far as I'm concerned, even if not telling you to do anything illegal, but if it's legal, light them off. I mean, but there you go. Enough of that. Of the situation going on there. Another fun story we get before we get into some serious stuff. I think couple of them. Here's one of that. Oh, beware of hand sanitizer. There's a little and I would have never thought of it because I don't. I mean, I do use hand sanitizer, but never would have really thought of it. But somebody got in a big pickle over this. This is an ABC7 report. We're going to let her rip.
This is what's left of the room where Kate Wise was getting her children ready for bed. On Sunday night, the mother of 3 says she used an off-brand hand sanitizer before lighting a candle at her Round Rock home near Austin, Texas.
And then the explosion happened that in a matter of 2 seconds lit my entire body on fire. And I heard my daughters screaming, "Mom's on fire, Mom's on fire."
Her 2 youngest girls, just 6 and 7 years old, were able to escape, while Kate was left battling the flames to save her teenage daughter.
Evelyn has cerebral palsy, so I knew even in the chaos of things that she wasn't going to be able to save herself. So my next mission was to get myself, even though I'm unable to see and my skin is sizzling, was to get to her room.
After getting her to safety, Kate spent several days in the ICU.
Even though I'm in excruciating pain and I'm trying to do what I can do, to get back to 100%.
Hand sanitizers continue to fly off the shelves during the pandemic. And although the CDC says fire incidents related to alcohol-based hand sanitizers are very low, the National Fire Protection Agency considers them a flammable liquid.
So I can tell you by experience with the alcohol on that we need to yes, alcohol is very flammable, and the bad thing about I know about some alcohols, especially methanol, which have burned out the exhaust of many a race car, was it's invisible on the flame, so you can't see it, and so all of a sudden you're not seeing anything. But all of a sudden, you're feeling this heat like coming on like crazy. So alcohol is nothing to to take lightly on that. I never would have thought hand sanitizer would light off on that. But again, just beware. And alcohol's in a lot of over-the-counter medications, hand sanitizers, cleaners, because it is a very effective in germ killer for the germaphobes out there on the situation. So just be careful with that kind of stuff because you don't want to wind up like this lady on the wrong end of a hand sanitizer burnout on that. It's kind of amazing to me that little hand sanitizer bottle had that much power in it that would let that kind of stuff rip, but I guess it did on that. It's another public service announcement on that. Now, this is another one video we got. This is on Twitter. Herschel Walker, great running back, college football, Dallas Cowboys. He was like, he was like gold standard of running. I mean, he was the best of the best when he was playing football. Yeah, I think he might have even been a Heisman Trophy winner, if I'm not mistaken. But he said some interesting things. Been out there, so one of the one of the voices. I ain't gonna say few. One of the great voices out there telling the rioters, "Knock it off. This is stupid. You shouldn't be doing this stuff." So he ran in a tweet, and we're going to play you the video here in a second. And he asked a very interesting question. Outsiders to riot coming in from other communities should get federal time for destroying lives and businesses. Here's Herschel Walker on the Twitter machine, so here we go.
You can tell I've been working out, and you can tell I'm thinking. And I watch a lot of these beautiful cities being destroyed by people rioting. And I saw all these local leaders that won't step to the plate to protect their citizens or their citizen business. So I'm going to step to the plate and become a local leader in the sense that I want to put in a mandate that anyone arrested during a riot and they're not from that city, they don't have a resident in that city or that town, should be arrested and get federal time because I pay state and federal taxes. So on my federal taxes, I want them to get federal time for the crime they committed. So local leaders, it's time for y'all to step to the plate and take control. This got to stop.
Couldn't agree
you can tell
more
I've been
with
working out.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with Herschel Walker on this one. I mean, yeah, they should charge them with if there was ever a reason or a better reason to use the RICO Act, which was started by when the gangs and the organized crime was doing of that, you're crossing state lines across this stuff. Man, you should be hit. There's the in for the Trump administration, William Barr, our Attorney General, to come in and do it because now you're crossing state lines. Now the federal government can get involved in this stuff. So that's a brilliant idea from Herschel Walker, and I hope William Barr, our U.S. Attorney General, and Donald Trump put every effort into doing this because, man, that'll knock them for a loop on the whole enchilada on this stuff because anyway, in my book, anything, if they can charge these Antifa rioters, I don't care if you get every Barney Fife cop out there and write them jaywalking tickets. I don't care. Get them off the streets. Get the agitators in jail, and let's get our cities and towns, communities, states in the United States back to a place you can live in. Instead of having to put up with a bunch of trash like this and intimidation tactics and all this other stuff, because it's absolutely crazy of what's going on in the whole enchilada. But it's the biggest. I mean, that's probably one of the best things I've heard all weekend on that is Herschel Walker, ace running back, proud American, and also that you might catch him with a MAGA hat on somewhere on that. I think he spoke. If I remember right, he spoke at the Republican convention. Another thing that crossed the radar screen, and again, like I talked about a little bit before, some of the nuances that go on all this stuff. And you might wonder why I bring up the important point of the United States being a net exporter of energy. Sans the fact that and you can talk about the COVID or anything else. Oh, you're not an expert. Oh, I want to hear from the experts. Experts longer than from here to the moon said the United States would never be energy independent and that we would run out of energy. We'd run out of oil and gas and fossil fuels. That's what hair gel goes on and on about and all this. Biden did, Obama did, and Bernie Sanders and Pocahontas and all them, we're all going to die burning fossil fuels and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, Trump comes in, dumps the stupid regulations, lets the wildcatters go out there and explore for oil and natural gas, mainly fracking, that loosens up or frees up natural gas that's down in the shale and the hard rock down there, and you can extract it. Has made the United States of America in 2 years when he did that by 2018 energy independent. Now in 2020 we are actually a net exporter of energy. And it goes back to all y'all that oh, that I hate Trump and Trump did this and Trump Russia and blah 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 blah. If you want to kill America, keep supporting the Joe Bidens, the Kamala Harrises, the Gavin Newsoms of the world. You want a, maybe not the best idea in the world, the gender, revealers or whatever. They had a pyro show out that and start a fire. Well, it grows bigger because we're not cleaning out our forests. People are going to do dumb things. It's just human nature. So you get back to that, we're a net exporter of energy, and now all y'all that love those little solar panels on the roof and think we're all going to be driving electric cars and all this other yo-ho stuff, go study Germany. Germany, about 10 years ago, had almost to a T what AB 32 is that passed in California, which is green energy. We're going to eliminate closing down nuclear power plants. I think that's happening in California, or has happened in California. Germany said we're going all green, no fossil fuels, da-da-da-da-da. The biggest train wreck probably in history on the energy front happened to Germany. They went from 10 cents a kilowatt hour of electricity to 30 cents. People could not afford to turn 125-degree heat. You cannot afford to turn on your air conditioning at those kind of prices, although I think in California we're about halfway there. We're about 15 cents a kilowatt hour and climbing, and the highest electricity per prices in the nation, and plus net importer of electricity. And probably 50% of our capacity on electricity is coming from natural gas-fired generators. But we in California put the frown on all this stuff, gas exploration. There's probably more oil. You take and go 360 around this globe. There's probably more oil sitting under California and Mexico than anywhere in the freaking world. But at least in California, you cannot drill for 99.999% of it. So it came up. So now the Germans had this big train wreck. Now they had to buy energy from the Russians burning black coal just straight out the smokestacks. Now you want to talk about greenhouse gases and all this other stuff? Well, so now they're trying to make a deal with the Russians to do the Nord Stream, that's N-O-R-D, Stream 2 pipeline, to pipeline natural gas from Russia into Germany, so they can have a reliable source of energy so the people ain't setting out with no air conditioning in 125-degree temperatures or whatever in the normal summertime. Whatever it is, everything. Gas prices are going up, everything, because there's a big energy shortage because they thought they were going green and solar and wind and The United States is saying, wait a minute, and Donald Trump in particular. Didn't you guys say Trump was all involved with the Russians and making deals with Putin and all this? And now they're doing that. You know, we can drill it, extract it, send it to a port, put it on a ship, and ship it to Germany. We can ship natural gas to Germany cheaper than Russia with the pipeline. By far, by about 50%. Ted Cruz, obviously from Texas, or maybe not obviously, but you will know why, because when they got one of the big ports where the ships go out on this stuff, exporting the energy, refined gasoline, because a lot of places don't have enough refinery capacity, natural gas or whatever. He said, along with the national security threat, this should not be completed. But it doesn't mention in the Washington Post article that, uh, obviously Texas that's a large part of their economy now is used to be manufacturing energy or pumping it out of the ground. Now they probably have more billions of dollars in economic activity exporting or sending it out than they do extracting it. So along with it being a security threat, because now Germany is going to be dependent on who? Vladimir Putin and Russia. Right in the heart, in the middle of Europe. What if Russia says, oh, they want to pull some crap? We'll just flip the switch here, and you no longer, we're shutting off the pipeline. You don't think that they would pull that? If you don't think so, it's hardy har har har. I mean, it was driving. Why do you think United Arab Emirates made a peace treaty with Israel? Because, well, let's say, and I don't know exactly, it's probably turned into a little bit of havoc going on in part of this since COVID. The United States, under the Trump administration, was turning the world energy supply upside down as far as making it cheaper, more accessible. That's why those in the Middle East are now starting to say, we want to cut a deal because you are undercutting our prices so much because you have such an abundant supply of energy, you're flooding it with a market, we can't sell the oil. Consequently, shake whomever, whatever, yada, 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 that's probably worth billions and billions of dollars and all that other stuff. They're humongous. Their cash flow's getting pinched quite a bit because, the price of energy has been driven down, down, down. The report is not only will we be the biggest we probably are already the biggest producer of natural gas. We will probably be the world's biggest natural gas seller within the next 2 or 3 to 4 years. Most people will be dependent on us for natural gas, which is a cheap, clean burning source of energy on that. And imagine that. Imagine just the economic power of the United States. Just imagine if we have the power of being the biggest energy exporter in the world. That's such a dramatic game changer. It wouldn't even, it kind of boggles the mind to how much that will go. Mind you this, and this is some food for thought for thinking of going forward. If Hillary Clinton would have been elected president in 2016, we would not have been in this situation. And the economy being as strong and rip-roaring as it was going with this, along with all the other stuff, bringing capital in, cutting taxes, for that capital, $1 trillion came back in. The amount of money that was circulating through our economy over energy. You don't think China's taken a notice of this? If our economy wasn't as strong as it was because of a lot of the things the Trump administration did, with this COVID thing, if we would have been hit and our economy wasn't booming and this such stuff wasn't going for us, Katie, bar the freaking door. You think things are bad now? You couldn't imagine that. We're going to have Kelly Victory on here after the bottom of the hour. And we're going to get into more of the dangers. Because those of you that fly the flag of Bernie Sanders and Pocahontas and Joe Biden and Gavin Newsom and Loretta Sanchez and on and on and on and on. You're the ones because you're the ones driving this. And if you continue to support them, you are the ones that are destroying life in the United States as we knew it prior to March of 2020. You are destroying the greatest society ever in the history of the world. Because I don't care if it's fires, energy policy, COVID, medical, health insurance, everything, they wind up destroying everything. Because somebody else controlling you will wind up destroying you. I said it 8,000 billion 493,697,992 times. The only proven way through recorded human history that you're ever going to have a successful economy, a high quality of life, and the ability to live that life as you see fit, as I was taught by Milton Friedman, Frederick Hayek, and a lot of very fancy economists, a lot of very smart economists, is to embrace the free market. If you think somebody else is going to save you or doing that, you are sadly mistaken. Not only sadly mistaken, you ain't going to like the end result. Now, in a free market, it's going to depend on you busting your ass or not to get it done. Or would you like to be busting your ass 3 times harder for 1/10 of what you can have? And as I've said it before, the illegal aliens are the 20th century slaves in this country. The crying shame of a lot of the policies that have been done. And I will put the establishment Republicans into this, the establishment Democrats. Their policies, they're working together to benefit them, not you. That's why they hate Trump so much. Because he doesn't play their tune. And I don't care if he was part of the Green Party. He's getting the job done and trying to do what he thinks is right on this whole deal. So, again, we're coming, and it's getting close, if not 60 days. We're getting down to the last 2 months of the November 3rd's coming fast. And what is today, the 7th? Yeah, we're got to be less than 60 days, less than 2 months till November 3rd in the elections. And they're all important. Trump gets presidency always gets a lot, but guys like Ali Missouri running for assembly, Chris Rahigi's running for assembly, your local city council members that are running, mayors, school board members, all this stuff is important. In fact, that can have more impact and usually does on your life than anything that goes on with the federal government. But
1 minute, 1 minute.
That's part of the deal, but I understand the front runner mentality, or everybody wants to be on the big bandwagon of going on, but you should really, if there was ever a critical time, that you should be paying attention to the election coming up. It's got to be November 3rd, 2020. I usually don't say
30 seconds
of that. People say, I've heard it for many, many years. Oh, this election's the most important election we have ever had. Well, they're all very important. One really doesn't stack up against more than the other. I think that's the way you should look at it. The right to vote or have your
Here we go.
vote
10
for
seconds.
representation is
1490am.com and download your free phone app today.
IE Newswire Daily is on the air.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed are not necessarily those of radio station KMET, its management, employees, or affiliates.
There we are with that funky slide guitar music that comes on every Monday through Friday at 5:30 on the internet. 1490 KMET on that. And, a magnificent Monday coming up. Some of the things I could think people out on some of this stuff would be very interesting, but most of the time, unless it's a fun something, I won't do it. We talked about a lot of stuff, a lot of important stuff, but we're gonna have our premier expert that we have going on each and every day, or at least once a week. We've tried to have her on, and ever since this COVID thing hit, and I, for one, have been very grateful for all the information she's given us, because I haven't, and I try hard and I look for it. Some of the things I've tried to disprove some of the things she said, even though in my gut told me she was right. But I just wanted to make sure, it's good to test, reverse engineer test the theories on that. But I can't think of nobody that I've known that's been so totally dead right in this whole COVID-19 thing. And the one kind of good thing, though, is I think some of the COVID hysteria that we've had, or the dominance of it, is starting to fade away, which could be I'm hoping is a good thing. But we're going to find out from our next guest, Dr. Kelly Victory, who, as the aforementioned, like I say, greatest expert in this whole thing transpiring on that. And that's just my opinion, but I think my opinion is pretty darn good. Kelly Victory, welcome to IE Newswire Daily with Roy.
Hey, Roy. Happy Labor Day, and thanks very much for the nice intro. I appreciate the kudos. It was a little lonely out here. You might, remember back in February, March, and April. Fortunately, I've been able to get a few other folks to come over to my side of the fence here with regard to the coronavirus hysteria. As you know, I've said from the beginning, the virus is very, very real. I am not one who's ever said or implied that the virus itself is a hoax, or that it is that there's nothing to it at all. We certainly know that it's a significant virus that can make certain people very ill, and obviously certain people have actually succumbed and died from it. But the good news is we've known from the very beginning who those people are most likely to be. We know that it's a very small group of people who are actually at significant risk. Those people generally in the older age, categories over the age of 70 or 75. And as importantly, or perhaps more importantly, people who have these significant comorbidities that we keep talking about, things like diabetes and obesity and hypertension. And the real just tragedy of this whole fiasco is that our public health officials and politicians and public policy folks have acted as if everybody is at an equal risk, as if all of us and children and healthy young people and even people in their 70s but who are otherwise healthy, we've acted as if, or they have acted as if, everybody is at equal risk, and therefore everybody should be treated the same and have to be subjected to the same level of separation and mask wearing and social isolation and all of this other craziness.
Obviously out here in California, it's been hotter than Hades out here this whole weekend. And you were getting back to the people, the pictures of, at the beach, people are just, jamming the whole thing. And other than Anthony Fauci having a little bit of a spaz attack about this thing, I hope people keep their social distancing so we don't have a regress of this, that was mainly, or compared to when it happened a couple months ago or stuff and we had all this, it was like relatively just flew through the news like under the radar screen.
I agree, and I think part of it's interesting because I've been watching the same thing. There seems to be a little bit of it dying down, and I'm not sure if it's actually because the virus itself is doing exactly what we knew it would do, which is that we've continued to see drastic decreases in hospitalizations, decreases in death rates, decreases in any significant illness. That combined with the fact that there are other things really consuming the news cycle, all of the riots and the fact that half of the country is on fire is part of it. Both literally man-made fires in Portland and forest fires where you and I live. So part of it is that. And I think there's a little bit of crisis fatigue. There's really a psychological issue where people start saying at some point, you keep running around saying the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And after a while, when people they become numb to it, if you will. Honestly, I was thinking the other night, if I had 5,000 people in a room, just 5,000 people from across the country, and you started and said, okay, raise your hand if you personally, not heard about, but if you personally know someone who died of COVID. And in all likelihood, no one would raise their hand and say, okay. Well, raise your hand if you know personally someone who was admitted to the ICU with COVID. Okay. Then when nobody raises their hand, say, okay, raise your hand if you know anyone who actually was hospitalized with COVID. And you keep working it back till you finally say, do you know anyone who actually got sick with this? And people start to say, yes, actually, my mother-in-law got it, or this person I work with had it and was quite ill and felt lousy for several days. But people start looking around saying, gosh, this is supposedly the biggest thing that's ever happened in the history of mankind, yet I personally don't know anyone who's gotten it and been sick enough that they even needed to go to the doctor, let alone ended up in the ICU or on a ventilator. And so I think over time, people get what I would call crisis fatigue because there's so much hype, but then when they personally don't know anybody and they don't know of anybody, and instead they're having to be constantly really not only inconvenienced by wearing a mask or whatever it is, but really harmed by it. The number of people whose businesses have been harmed by it, whose families have been harmed by it, whose children have been harmed by it, is really pretty overwhelming. And so I think it's a combination of all of these things.
And I think you are right, and we've talked about it before, the boy who cried wolf syndrome going on and the dangers of that. But another topic that we've talked about, and it may come out later on, but, the IEN Newswire family of this might have hit home, of the consequences of the lockdowns, and you mentioned the businesses and the damage of that. But I'm reading more and more and more reports. One in Colorado, I think we went over about the heart attacks. All of a sudden, they thought nobody was having heart attacks, but then they found out more people are dying at home because they're not going to the hospital of
Exactly.
this stuff. And so, and I'm hearing more and more reports of this is what's scaring me, maybe scaring me, or not that I didn't think it was coming because we discussed it, but I think this is going to be the lexicon or the narrative of this back on. You predicted it. Dr. Scott Atlas has predicted it, and many others, that when the final chapter is written, I don't know what it's going to be. It could be 10, 100, 1,000 times, but the damage done by the lockdown is going to far, far, far outweigh any benefit mask wearing or lockdowns or anything else ever had.
Roy, but by not only correct, but by an order of magnitude. It isn't going to be close. Back in June, the very first week of June, and I think we talked about this, the CEOs of the Cleveland Clinic and the Mayo Clinic, two large preeminent hospital systems in the United States, their two CEOs wrote a letter to the New York Times back in June saying that by their estimation, with what they were seeing from their hospitals, the number of deaths as a result of the lockdown were going to exceed the number of deaths from the virus because of things like delayed screening tests for cancer, delayed treatment for heart attacks and strokes, people not receiving routine care for diabetes and getting into trouble from those things. They were already seeing what I had termed back in April and May COVID lateral damage from this whole thing, saying this is going to be a problem. I just heard a statistic a week or so ago out of California that California is reporting a 62% decrease in cases of lung cancer being diagnosed this year in 2020. Now, I hate to break it to you, it's not because people in the middle of a pandemic stopped smoking and got healthy. Everyone's been sitting on the sofa eating Pringles and not working out. So, in fact, people have actually gained weight, worked out less, and unfortunately have used more, there's been more issues of substance abuse, whether that's drugs, alcohol, or tobacco products. So when you quote a statistic or find a statistic like the fact that there's a 60+% decrease in cases of lung cancer, that's because those people aren't getting screened. That's because people aren't keeping routine appointments. That's because people are scared to go to their routine doctor's office, or because tragically so many doctor's offices were closed or on limited hours, saying we're only seeing emergency cases, or we have to spread our patients out so much with this social distancing that they could only see 50% of the patients they'd normally see. So when you start seeing those sorts of statistics, we've seen it across the board with diagnoses of diabetes and heart attacks and strokes and all other kinds of chronic illnesses, not because those things have actually decreased, simply because people aren't getting treated and evaluated.
It brings me back in this little story I've told before. I'm going to tell it again. Mr. Kaiser, who started Kaiser Steel in Fontana, California, became a big cement plant. Most people know Kaiser Permanente Hospitals, if not one of the biggest hospital institutions now in our nation. That, and not their original hospital, but their newer one that they built in where they started in Fontana, California, which he started for his employees, basically, so they would have good health care back in the 40s or 50s or whenever. I drove by that, I was cruising by Fontana, drove by the hospital about a month ago, and the parking lot was like empty. And I'm thinking, that parking lot has never seen fewer cars than the day they paved it.
I've seen this everywhere. I can't believe it, Roy, but it's absolutely the truth. The local hospitals where I am, absolutely, the parking lots have a handful of cars. The dentist office, these sorts of places, really, they're trying to spread people out in the same way that the restaurants are, because they've got all of these mandates, or because they believe they're doing the right thing by not having two people in the waiting room at any one time. So, they're going through all of these, these hoops and jumping through all of these different sort of ways of trying to spread people out. My dentist, I went to the dentist the other day, and I had to wait in the parking lot until the person before me came out. I mean, oh my God, it was just awful. And I feel for the people trying to run these offices like that. I know that that's how, my office has been the same way. We've got to walk patients in one door and out a back door so they don't pass in the waiting room. All of this silliness, just absolute silliness that's been we've been subjected to by the county, in my case, by the county. In California, you're seeing that everywhere. So much of this is just ridiculous hoop jumping that doesn't translate into nobody's being made safer by this. We know who the people are who are at risk from this thing. We need to protect those folks and get on with it. The devastation from this has been so great. And as we get into the fall, if you had told me back when I rolled my eyes when we were still going to be shut down at Easter time, thinking, oh my God, I can't believe this isn't going to be over by Easter. Oh my Lord, those were the good old days. We went through Memorial Day, 4th of July, now Labor Day, and truly, pretty soon, people are going to need to start making plans or want to start making plans for the fall holidays. You've got the Jewish holidays coming up in September, and then ultimately into Thanksgiving and Christmas. If people can't make plans, and those oh my God, my heart bleeds for the people who are isolated in nursing homes, assisted living facilities, those sorts of places, who have been kept from friends and family because of this whole thing. If we can't get on with the holiday season the way we normally do, I honestly just really fear for the lives of people who are just going to give up. The number of elderly people who are just going to say, God, if this is the way I need to live in my, my my final days on this green earth, to heck with it. I'll check out now.
It is. And I go back to that. I mean, even Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr. Birx, and I have not heard one person refute this per much, because they never say we're going to stop COVID-19 or the coronavirus or anything. They just said we may be able to slow it down, spread it, and the whole thing, and we've all been through that, to slow the curve so our hospitals didn't get overwhelmed. Where our hospitals have never been overwhelmed. We're over 6 months into this thing, and it's like this nightmare isn't ending.
No, you're right. You're precisely right. Every once in a while I'll hear them say something ridiculous, like now we've moved on to, until we get the vaccine. That's the holy grail now, is the vaccine. And you know how I feel about that. I'm very pro-vaccine in general. But what I mean by that is for vaccines that have been tried and tested, we've had adequate time to evaluate both their efficacy and their safety, and vaccines for diseases for which there would be significant ill effect if you were to get it. And I don't think that COVID-19 falls into any of those. It certainly isn't a vaccine that's been fully vetted. We have not had adequate time to determine both, or either its efficacy or its safety. And furthermore, the risk to most people if they get COVID-19 is so low that the idea of getting a vaccine for it, I think, is preposterous. So I hear them now talking about, well, thank God the vaccine's right around the corner. Until we, wipe out COVID-19, I'm saying we're never going to eradicate it any more than we've eradicated the common cold or other coronaviruses that are out there, or all of the millions of other, bugs that exist all the time. This is not polio we're talking about. It's not smallpox. This isn't something that impacts or has the ability to affect, all people the same way, or to make significantly ill a large part of the population. So I agree. I don't think there's any exit strategy right now. Certainly Gavin Newsom doesn't have one. And when he came out with his updated color-coded scheme there, the whatever it is, purple, red, orange, and yellow, I'm like, where's green? Where's green, Gavin?
Yes.
I mean, where's the get back to normal color? And you notice that there is no green in his scheme, because I think, as far as he's concerned, he'd be perfectly happy to continue this debacle, into 2021. And unfortunately, I think that's where we're going. How any small businesses ever come back from that, I frankly don't know. The estimations of the number of restaurants, for example, that will never reopen, it's now upwards of 50% of restaurants that have closed or been closed during this will never, ever reopen.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't choose it, but I'm wearing a green shirt today. And when I heard that in the press conference, I think it was last week, I mean, I almost flew through the roof. And what is even more surprising to me is that should be the number one thing we're talking about in California. Of where's the green? I mean, and the consequences of this, like I say, that this is a long-term effect of this whole enchilada that we've been thrown at. And again, the evidence of the story, or the story as it's unfolding, does not look like it's going to come out good for 98.7% of us.
Right. And the problem all along has been that we've been following, and I've said this from the beginning, the wrong parameters. The politicians and people like Gavin Newsom and, unfortunately, public health, quote-unquote, leaders like Birx and Fauci have continued to follow what they call the case number, the positive cases, by which what they mean is the positive test results, because the vast majority of the people with these positive test results are not ill. 80+% of them have nary a symptom. So to call that a positive case is really disingenuous. To say that we wouldn't call that a case of anything else if you have no symptoms. So they have a positive test but no symptoms. We know that they are very unlikely to spread it. No matter who you want to talk to, any scientific literature will back up that asymptomatic people are very unlikely to be spreading this, simply because they don't have enough viral load to do so, and the virus that they have has likely already been rendered incapable of causing disease. That's why they don't have symptoms, because they have virus particles in their nose and mouth, but they don't have symptoms because their T cells or their antibodies that they've already formed have rendered that virus incapable of creating disease. So, but if you keep following case numbers, meaning positive tests, then we are going to go around in this circle, ad infinitum.
One thing, we got a couple minutes left, but I want to get your opinion on this. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of politics behind this. They're saying, well, after the election, this whole thing is going to go away, whether Trump wins or Biden wins or however they all work out. I'm just getting an ever-sinking feeling that we're in this for a lot longer ride on this whole thing. Anyway, I just want to know how you saw it.
It's a great question. There was a time some months ago where I truly believed that this all was going to be over on November 4th. I thought, that's going to be it. As soon as the election's over, COVID is going to, miraculously disappear. I don't believe that anymore. I think this has been internalized by so many people, by such a huge portion of the public, and by so many people in positions of power, that the power-hungry component of it, the idea that these guys are able to make, mandates and make regulations and pass all of these policies, and in fact, I think it's become intoxicating to them. And so many people have internalized this and truly believe that they are doing the right thing by mankind by wearing a mask and socially distancing and keeping their children home from school so we can protect the poor teachers who are putting their lives on the line every day to teach your preschooler. It's just so insane. But it is we have elevated virtue signaling to a sport. It's become absolutely competitive now. And so I fear that you are precisely right, Roy. I don't think it's going to go away after the election, regardless of who gets elected. There's no question if Donald Trump gets reelected that things will be a heck of a lot better. If Biden and Harris end up there, I think we are in for a really, really dire next years ahead.
Thank you very much for the time, Kelly Victory. It's our pleasure, the audience, because couldn't agree more with everything you said. We'll do it again real soon.
Sounds great, Roy. Take care.
There you go. Update on the stuff. And I was kind of hoping she would disagree with my synopsis on there, but in my gut, I figured she was going to say exactly the same thing I was feeling, and she did about there, and that's why I asked that question at the end. And again, I've said it. I had a sinking feeling that day in March or whenever it was. I think it was March when that plane was coming over from Wuhan, China, and was supposed to go to Ontario, and they diverted it to March. I had a sinking feeling this ain't right, and it's been going downhill ever since that point. And I was kind of buying into that. I figured, well, one way or the other, after November 3rd, once the election's over, this whole thing's going away, because there will be no more quasi-political, let's say, electability part on that, no matter which way it goes. But I think they've seen how the establishment and the very few power brokers have seen how they can really, I bet you it's even surprised them how quickly they've got a majority of the people to turn or change their way of thinking, and behaviors, more important, not way of thinking, behaviors, this quickly by the disinformation campaign, and on and on and on of that. And again, it's like Mason Weaver's book, Leave the Plantation. It's very important. I mean, the predictability of that and how to make it all happen. Tom Del Beccaro's book, The Divided Era, that's what you do. You get people, fighting each other. You get them to distrust each other and all this. And voila, man, you can rope them in. It's, it's like the old wild pig story from Arkansas. We don't have enough time to tell it, but it's very true. You can change not only human, but you can change living things' behavior very quickly if you know the right buttons and keys to push. And you can do that, as they say, for good. You can do that for evil. And so much of what we see going on today, I just see it going the wrong way. And I think a lot of other people are coming to that conclusion too. And it's really, really, really sad that we had to go through this, but maybe it's been good to that, because I do see a lot of rebound. I do see a lot of people who were going along with this. Now they're even starting to question it and questioning it big time. So you never know. Sometimes you just back up a little bit or wait, or, you might not see it at the particular time, but, if you're patient and wait it out and always keep trying to do the right thing, you may not see it now, but things will usually work out in the end. And I'm really hoping that it does in this situation. Maybe it was a wake-up call the majority of us needed. We'll be back tomorrow on Taco Tuesday. Hopefully Stephanie will be back after that. So until then, see ya!